"Don't go near that limo," my father shouted as I walked toward the black vehicle waiting outside the airport. His words were loud enough that strangers turned to look. For a second I just stood there trying to understand why the man who raced me was stopping me like I had done something wrong. "My name is Kendra Vale and I spent years trying to make my father proud." Mason Vale was the kind of person who respected titles, connections, and appearances. He believed success came from who stood beside you, not from the work you put in when nobody was watching. I grew up watching him admire powerful people, but he never looked at me the same way. Even when I achieved something important, he found a way to make it sound ordinary. I became someone who handled pressure, made difficult decisions, and earned respect through my own efforts. Still, when I came home, I was just his daughter. That day, I arrived wearing the uniform I had worked years to earn. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I had a responsibility waiting for me. But my father saw the situation differently. He saw a luxury limo, important guests, and a place he believed I shouldn't step into. He thought he was stopping me from embarrassing myself. He didn't realize the opposite was about to happen. The people around that vehicle weren't waiting for someone else. They were waiting for me. And before my father could say another word, the chauffeur looked past him, smiled, and called my name. In that moment, everything my father misunderstood about me was finally about to come to light. My father, Mason Vale, always had a certain idea of what success looked like. To him, important people wore expensive suits, arrived in luxury cars, and had others recognize them the moment they walked into a room. He never noticed the people working quietly behind those moments. For years, I built my career without needing attention. I learned how to handle pressure, make choices when things became difficult, and stay focused when others doubted me. Every step forward came from patience, discipline, and the willingness to keep going even when nobody was celebrating me. The uniform I wore wasn't just clothing. It carried years of dedication, early mornings, and responsibilities most people never saw. But whenever my father talked about me, he always kept it simple. "My daughter works in government." That was the only sentence he used. He never explained the position I earned, the trust placed in me, or the reason people respected my work. Maybe he didn't understand it, or maybe admitting it meant accepting that I had built something bigger than he expected. I never needed him to introduce me like I was someone special. I just wanted him to see the person standing in front of him. The funny thing was, strangers understood my role faster than my own family did. They saw the confidence behind the uniform. They saw the responsibility I carried. My father only saw the daughter he remembered years ago. He didn't realize that the same girl he thought needed guidance had become the person others depended on during important moments. My mother, Elise Vale, was the only person in my family who truly saw the effort behind my journey. She remembered the nights I stayed awake preparing, the moments I questioned myself, and the times I kept moving forward even when things felt impossible. My father noticed results, but he rarely noticed the process. He loved being around successful people. He enjoyed conversations with leaders, officials, and people with influence. Whenever he entered those spaces, he carried himself like he belonged there. What he never admitted was that his own daughter had become part of that world. I could feel the difference whenever we attended events together. He would proudly talk about the people he knew, but when the conversation turned toward me, he kept my achievements vague. It was strange hearing him speak so confidently about strangers while making my own accomplishments sound small. My mother would sometimes correct him. "She has worked hard for this," she would say. But my father would change the subject. I think he was comfortable with the version of me he remembered as a child. The daughter who listened, followed directions, and looked to him for answers. He wasn't prepared for the woman I became. I didn't chase recognition from him anymore. I learned that some people only understand your value when the world around them points it out. That day at the airport wasn't about proving anything to my family. It was simply the moment when my father finally saw what my mother had known for years. The person he underestimated was the same person everyone else was waiting for. That morning at the airport was supposed to be a simple arrival. My parents, Mason and Elise, thought they were there for an important meeting and a special welcome. My father wore his finest suit, carrying himself with the confidence he always had when he was around powerful people. I arrived a little later, dressed in my official uniform. The moment Mason saw me walking toward the black limo, his entire expression changed. He didn't smile. He didn't ask why I was there. Instead, he immediately stepped forward like he needed to stop something from happening. For years, my father cared deeply about appearances. He worried about how people viewed our family, what others would say, and whether everything looked perfect from the outside. That day he wasn't thinking about my feelings. He was thinking about the scene in front of him. He saw his daughter approaching a vehicle surrounded by important people, and he assumed I was making a mistake. In his mind, I was still the person who needed to be guided, protected, and reminded of boundaries. What he didn't understand was that I wasn't walking towards something I didn't belong near. I was arriving for something I was responsible for. The people around the limo weren't confused by my presence. They weren't wondering who I was or why I was there. Only my father was. Watching him stand between me and that vehicle made me realize something painful. He had spent so much time judging where I belonged that he never stopped to see how far I had already come. And in just a few seconds, the truth he avoided for years was about to stand right in front of him. "Stop right there." My father's voice cut through the noise around the airport entrance. People nearby started looking in our direction, trying to understand what was happening. I stood there quietly, holding myself together while Mason stepped in front of me. "You can't just walk up to that car," he said. The way he said it wasn't a simple warning. It sounded like he believed I was about to cross a line I didn't understand. For a moment I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. Did he see his daughter who had spent years building a career? Or did he still see the young woman who once needed his approval for every decision? I didn't argue with him. I didn't raise my voice. After years of being underestimated, I had learned that sometimes silence says more than explanations. My father looked around, aware that people were watching. He cared about how the moment appeared to everyone standing there. He wanted to avoid embarrassment, but he didn't realize his actions were creating the exact situation he feared. The strange part was that nobody around the limo looked confused by me being there. The chauffeur didn't move toward me to question my presence. The staff nearby didn't ask me to leave. They already knew who I was. Only my father was unaware. He thought he was protecting a place that belonged to someone else. He didn't realize he was standing in the way of the person everyone was waiting to welcome. And as I looked at him, I understood something I had avoided for years. My biggest challenge was never proving myself to strangers. It was hoping my own father would finally see me. The moment that changed everything happened when the chauffeur stepped out of the limo. Until that second, my father still believed he was the person controlling the situation. He stood there confidently, thinking he had stopped me from making a mistake. Then the chauffeur looked directly at me. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't question why I was near the vehicle. Instead he smiled and said, "Commander Vale, we've been expecting you." The entire atmosphere changed. My father's expression froze. The confidence he had moments earlier disappeared as he tried to understand what he had just heard. My mother, Elise, looked at me with a mixture of surprise and pride. She knew I had worked hard, but even she didn't expect that my arrival would be revealed in front of everyone like that. I watched my father process the moment. For years he had spoken about powerful people as if they were always someone else. He never imagined that one day his own daughter would be the person others were waiting for. The chauffeur opened the door, and suddenly the same vehicle my father told me to stay away from became the place everyone was looking toward. Nobody laughed. Nobody questioned me. The only person who seemed out of place was the one who thought I didn't belong. I didn't feel happy seeing my father embarrassed. That was never my goal. What mattered was that the truth finally appeared without me having to defend myself. I had spent years trying to explain my journey, my responsibilities, and the work behind my position. But in that moment I didn't need a speech. My name, my uniform, and the respect around me said everything my father never understood. After the chauffeur called my name, I saw something change in my father's face. For the first time he couldn't explain me away. Mason had spent years believing my achievements were ordinary. He thought I had simply found a good opportunity, met the right people, or been lucky enough to move forward. He never saw the difficult moments behind my success. He never saw the decisions I had to make when nobody was there to guide me. He never saw the responsibility that came with my position or the pressure of carrying expectations that most people never knew existed. To him, the final result always looked easy. That was the part that hurt the most. He judged my life from the outside without understanding what it took to get there. Standing beside that limo, he finally witnessed the respect I had earned from people who only knew me through my work. There was no special introduction. No explanation. No need for me to convince anyone. The people around me already knew my role and trusted me. My father had spent so much time comparing himself to influential people that he never realized his own daughter had become one of those people others looked up to. I didn't want that moment to be about proving him wrong. I wanted him to understand that the person he kept underestimating had been growing all along. The biggest lesson for me wasn't about the limo or the attention. It was realizing that sometimes people only recognize your strength when they see the world recognizing it first. And that day my father finally saw the person I had always been. After that moment at the airport, everything felt different. My father became quiet. The man who always had something to say suddenly had no explanation for what happened. He had spent years being confident about his opinions, but seeing everyone welcome me changed the way he looked at me. The people around us had witnessed everything. They saw him try to stop me. They saw the chauffeur recognize me. They saw the truth unfold without me saying a single word. I could tell my father was uncomfortable, but I wasn't interested in making him feel embarrassed. That wasn't the reason I had worked so hard or built my life the way I did. For a long time I thought I needed to prove myself to him. I thought one more achievement, one more success, or one more accomplishment would finally make him understand. But that day taught me something different. Some people don't change because you explain yourself better. They change when reality becomes impossible to ignore. After we left the airport, I stopped waiting for the approval I had always wanted from my father. I still respected him. I still cared about him. But I no longer measured my worth by his opinion. My journey was mine. The years of effort, the choices I made, and the person I became were real whether he acknowledged them or not. The limo didn't create my confidence. The uniform didn't create my strength. Those things only revealed what had already been there. For the first time, I wasn't standing in front of my father hoping he would see me. I was standing there knowing exactly who I was. Months after the airport incident, my father finally asked to talk. For the first time, he wasn't speaking like the person who always had the answers. He wasn't giving advice or telling me what I should have done. He was simply trying to understand. He admitted that he had judged me without knowing the full picture. He said he thought he was protecting me that day. He believed he was stopping me from stepping into a situation that wasn't meant for me. I listened quietly. Then I asked him one question. Why did protecting me always feel like you were trying to make me smaller? The room became silent. Because that question wasn't about one moment at the airport. It was about years of feeling like I had to hide parts of myself to make him comfortable. My father struggled to answer because deep down he knew what I meant. He had spent so much time seeing me as the little girl he raised that he never accepted the woman I had become. He focused on where I came from instead of where I was going. I didn't need him to apologize for not understanding everything about my career. I needed him to recognize that my choices, my hard work, and my accomplishments belonged to me. That conversation didn't fix everything instantly. Some wounds take time. But it was the first time my father stopped defending his actions and started listening. For years I wanted him to see my success. That day I realized what mattered more was him finally seeing me. I never wanted my father to feel defeated. That was never the reason I worked hard or built my own path. I didn't want to stand above him. I only wanted to stand beside him and feel like he was proud of the person I became. For years I thought earning his approval would complete something inside me. I believed one day he would finally look at me and understand every sacrifice behind my journey. But I learned something important. My worth was never created by his recognition. The airport moment changed our relationship because it forced both of us to face the truth. My father had spent years holding on to an old image of me. He remembered the daughter who needed guidance, but he didn't notice the woman who had grown through challenges and responsibility. After everything that happened, I stopped trying to convince him. I stopped explaining every decision. I stopped searching for a reaction that might never come. Instead, I focused on the life I had built. The limo, the uniform, and the chauffeur calling my name were only one moment. The real victory was realizing I didn't need permission to take my place. My father once believed he was the person who decided where I belonged. But that day showed something different. I belonged wherever my dedication had taken me. I belonged among the people who trusted my abilities. I belonged in the life I created. And the most powerful part was that I didn't have to fight for that place anymore. I had already earned it. That was my story. Sometimes the people who doubt you become the reason you discover your own strength. Tell me in the comments who supported you when things got hard, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories.